Welcome to Pivot to First. Hi, I'm Mike Seidel. I'm the CTO at PivotCX. Every day I get to work with some of the brightest minds in the industry with one goal, turning hiring and people strategy into a competitive advantage. Today I'm joined by David Bernstein. He's our new Vice President of Corporate Development, and I'm really excited to be introducing David to everyone here. He's been in the industry for a very long time. He actually started off as a recruiter and then moved over to the technology side of things. And that's really exciting because he understands the day-to-day, he understands what recruiters go through and has a real passion for making life better for recruiters. And then on the other side, David has worked in the technology arena for about a decade and a half and has really worked hard to change candidate experience. And at PivotCX, we're kind of right at that intersection of recruiter and candidate experience. And so having someone on the team with 3 decades of experience is just a great thing. So David, welcome to the team and welcome to Pivot First.
Wow. Well, Mike, I'm super excited to be part of the team. Thank you. Yes, I am. I can't wait to really get this thing off and running, but thank you.
So before we get into everything, maybe you could give people the 5-minute version of how you got here. There's a lot to share, but really kind of go through the highlights of the things you've done and how that really has formed your opinions on candidate experience and really on what recruiting is.
Mike, sure. I had a fortunate experience to have my first HR job in life was working in the HR department at an HR technology company called PeopleSoft. And 1995, no email. No internet. Sure, for sure. Just beginning to use email as a business communication tool from outsiders. Um, Really quickly moved forward from being recruiter to moving into recruiting operations. My passion. I actually came from I did a career move. I moved out of was in a psychiatric field. Quite honestly, I was delivering patient services, psychiatric services. Um, I made a career change in 1995 to work in the corporate setting, and what I learned very quickly was that all my transferable skills, I was no longer kind of delivering patient services, but what I was doing was my new patient, I'll say, was the organization. We weren't doing treatment planning, we weren't doing diagnosing, we were doing business process reengineering. We were doing all the same kind of things you do. What's the best outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then how can you best get there? The tools, the treatment modality was different, but at the end of the day, the outcome was very similar. And my passion in helping things transform and evolve, and that's really at the crux of what makes me tick. Is I'm super excited about that, and I found in the professional world, in the corporate world, that I could really help businesses accelerate and get to business outcomes by re-engineering and rethinking how they could operate. And so began a journey, right? So PeopleSoft, I came in as a recruiter, but quickly realized we had all these tools around us that were just sitting there going unused. Um, it is the defining moment that led to where I am today. Because, I mean, I'll tell you, for example, one of the first things I did was I had a team of 4 people that reported to me. I ended up kind of creating this thing that didn't exist yet at
Sure.
PeopleSoft. We called it recruiting operations, right? But right back in the day, we used fax machines as a primary modality for capturing information from candidates. We'd run Sunday newspaper ads, thousands of dollars of Sunday ads across the globe. Monday morning, we'd walk in, and all that curly paper from this fax machine would be on the floor, right? And I had a team of folks that would scoop that up, flatten it out, and scan it, and then we'd parse that information into PeopleSoft. Um, Wednesday, the snail mail would show up. Thursday was the inter-office mail. By Friday, we had all of the paper received in the company for that previous week was then now parsed up into
Sure.
PeopleSoft, and soft copies were created and routed around on through our internal network back in the client server days, right? 4 people, 40 hours minimum, right? But 160 person hours later, we would leave on Fridays. We would stack load into the printer these postcards that would say on one side, right, had all the return address information. We'd run the PeopleSoft report that would print all the addresses on one side. And then we'd flip the stack over and it would say, "Dear Mike, thanks for your interest," right? We received your resume, said the process, but we basically spent 160 person hours every week trying to be able to just send an acknowledgement to every candidate, thanking them for their interest in the company, letting them know receipt of their resume, um, and what the process was next, right? And while it was far from perfect, it was our meager attempt at trying to indicate that we really cared and respected for the candidate, right? It's
Absolutely. And so you look at now, we all have applicant tracking software and we have all kinds of automation that's trying to do exactly what you were doing with, printing postcards and sending them out. Um, Now, and it's amazing how many companies still don't do that. They still look at the candidate and go, "I got your application, and we're doing some stuff internally, but we're not going to tell you anything unless we want you to come in for an interview." It is amazing how little things have changed in candidate
can you
experience,
believe
even in
it,
that
right?
30 years.
And I camp onto that, Mike. I think that what's interesting in all this
Right.
is that what makes a great candidate experience
No,
has not really
it
changed
hasn't.
over the years,
It,
right? What
most
people
candidates, it's the
want,
same as it
right?
was 30 years
Yeah,
ago. I put in
communication.
my application. I just want to be acknowledged that you got it, and maybe know what the status is a little bit, like we're considering you, or you're already out, or where it's being reviewed by the hiring manager, something like that, so I know it wasn't a waste of my time to apply with you. And so many companies still, they don't. I mean, it's they take your application, and what Sherm says the average time response time on an application is about 21 days, if you hear anything at all.
Yeah, it's just astounding, right? That there's so much black hole activity and nothing. Yes,
Sure.
technology, right? We dedicated 160 person hours just to say thanks. We got your resume, and it took a week to be able to do all that. I mean, today you can set these automated messages up, and just do a simple acknowledgement. But at the end, and these are just examples. These are hallmarks of people just want
Oh,
information, right? They just want to
absolutely.
understand
And
that
so,
that they're in the
kind of
process.
fast forward to
Excuse me.
now, and you just joined PivotCX, and we're trying to do something bigger than just acknowledge we got your application. We're trying to make it so every candidate can have an actual real live communication experience right when they apply. And so you look at this and look at where the state of candidate experience is today and where it could be. And I don't know about you, but I think there's just a huge gap there.
Oh, completely agree. Right? Um, it goes without saying, but just to kind of call it out,
Okay.
right? That recruiting, we tend to think about recruiting as hiring people. I think you and I've talked about this a lot, right? But at the end of the day, more people don't get hired than do, because the process, and as we all like to kind of go back to our concept of a funnel, right? And so by
Right.
definition, the funnel is all about whittling down, which means there's a great number of people that don't go through to the end point, right? And yet the process and the teams are structured. The architecture of the way the business operates is all set up to kind of really put eyeballs on the go forward team people, and yet most people aren't getting hired. So how do you create a process where no one's left behind, where right, all candidate, everybody, I think of recruiting as, everybody's cranky, right?
Right.
You've got candidates who are desperate and are wanting information, right? They're interested in a job. They've taken the time, all right? So they're cranky. They're not hearing. You've got recruiters who are overwhelmed, right, with too much work on a plate, 30 plus recs on average, right, as we know. And you got hiring managers who needed to hire someone yesterday, and so they're cranky and they want someone in the seat as soon as possible, right? Every stakeholder in the process is unhappy. And this opportunity to be able to kind of just, let's look at the engagement, the communications, the whole, the end to end. How do we kind of make that more scalable, personalized? Everybody gets the right communication at the right time. That's the golden opportunity here, right? PivotCX, I think, really has that
Yeah.
opportunity to be able to kind of just run with that, because I'm not seeing anybody else really kind of looking at it holistically that way. All stakeholders in an engagement and in a full kind of communication way across multiple channels, right? People don't live on email anymore, right? That used to be the it, right? I said postcards, then we evolved from postcards to email. But I mean, right? No,
Email worked for a while, and now people get more spam than they get anything else, and they ignore their emails, and so we're on to a new era, right?
completely.
So that kind of leads kind of to a question, and you're new with Pivot CX, and we're really excited to have you here because of your experience. I'm probably the most exciting thing about getting you in here is we were able to pull you away from an HR tech integrator where you've been working with lots of different applicant tracking systems and that kind of thing, and you're seeing kind of right where the state of the art is in recruiting and in recruiting technology. You've been right at that point. And what was it that got you so excited about joining Pivot CX? What was the thing that made you go, this is a team I'd like to be a part of?
So, like I mentioned a few of them, I'll call it out again, but um, the ability to kind of have the right kind of conversations with all candidates, right, at scale
Hmm.
in a very personalized way, no one left behind, making the process work for all stakeholders, recruiters, candidates, and the hiring teams, right? That kind of holistic view. This is not oftentimes things become either or solutions, right? You've got it's a candidate experience tool or it's a recruiter productivity tool. What if there were a way to have the best of everything all in one, right? It's not
Right.
locked into a single channel. There's the ability to kind of really be forward thinking and understand. You know, Part of my journey in my career included kind of working at a well-known chatbot company, right? These recruiting digital assistant companies. Again, great tools that really help, especially in a high volume world. Um, but again, recruiting is a relationship business, and at the end of the day, you need to have humans in the mix, right? A human in the loop, and
Well,
so the digital chatbots are a piece of the equation, but the ability to kind of really put together a communication and engagement platform that works for all parties, that's what's exciting, right? The opportunity and to be able to think about it, how it manages workflow and keeps forward motion. Anyway, keeps everybody in the game, right? The ability to kind of do that across
absolutely.
the board.
And what's so exciting about that is, and this has been for me as we brought Pivot CX to market, and then started growing the company. Every customer we're bringing in, we're able to go help the recruiters engage with more candidates. So, back to every candidate, no candidate gets left behind. Every candidate gets a really great experience. And it's really fun to get out there and see that in action and see that actually happening. Um, it, it it really is. I think there is really a transformation going out there in the recruiting world where we're going from, okay, I've got all these tools and they're all not talking to each other, but they all do important things for me, to where, hey, we need to orchestrate this around something, and the something that we really need to be orchestrating around is that conversation with the candidate. It's not about you know applies and all of that. Yeah, the application might start the conversation, but how do we orchestrate that whole conversation? So I've got a great candidate, we're going to hire them. How do we make that a great experience? I've got a not so great candidate that we're going to say no to, which, by the way, you nailed it. Most interactions with candidates will end up with no, right? How do I make that no a great experience so that candidate um, isn't turned off and isn't brand damage, if
Yeah,
you
yeah. I
will?
mean, the talent board talks about this very right consistently. Frequent feedback, respectful, right? I mean, and again, like we said, what makes a great candidate experience really hasn't changed over the years, and the tools that are available now to be able to enable it at scale are there. It's just we've got to get the teams to kind of understand that there is a better way, that there are other ways. I'll say this, Mike. In all my years, I have never met a recruiter or a recruiting team that purposely designed a cruddy candidate experience into the process. Right? No, nobody wakes up every day and says, "What can we do today to give these candidates a horrible experience?" Right? Said no one
No,
ever.
I agree with you, David.
Right?
I mean, I've met so many recruiters over the years, and they're all wonderful people, and they've got a really tough job. To be honest, you said understaffed. Well, you go look at most companies' talent acquisition teams; they're 3, 4 people short of what they need to just to do traditional recruiting, and nobody is staffed to actually talk to every candidate.
Imagine, right? Which is why they end up focusing on the go forward candidates only. Like I said, no one's purposely planning a poor candidate experience. It's an unintended outcome of overworked people being asked to do too many things. If you just try
Yes.
to run the numbers, if you've got 30 recs on your plate and you're going to talk to maybe, call it 5 candidates per rec, and you've got 30 managers then behind every one of those recs, that's 180 conversations you're supposed to be managing and keeping moving.
By the way,
Imagine it's just untenable, right?
yeah, it's huge. And the interesting thing, so you go look at SHRM's productivity numbers for recruiters, and one of the big things that always stands out to me is like 72% of recruiters' time gets spent doing resume screening. And so you look at the work that we're asking these people to do. Yeah, you might have to talk to 3 to 5 candidates for every one of them that you're going to hire. You've got to screen 90 for everyone you're going to hire. You got to read 90 resumes. And even if you spend 30 seconds, 1 minute on a resume, I just spent an hour and a half burning
Right.
through a stack of resumes, and I'm not even looking at them in enough detail to really spot everything. I'm just looking at enough of them that I can throw out the really bad ones. So I really do think recruiters, there's a big quality of life improvement out there that we can build for them, because there's just way too much work that goes into this, and not enough recruiters to go around.
Hands down, right? This is the opportunity, is enabling recruiting teams to be able to kind of do what they aspire to do. All right. Again, no one went into recruiting as well because they wanted to mistreat people, right? Most
Oh
recruiters
no.
are excited because they want to help people get jobs and help businesses meet hiring goals and meet business objectives. There are so many reasons people go into recruiting, but trying to create an unhappy experience, right? And again, they're unhappy. Like I said, their work-life balance is upside down. They got hiring managers in one ear, you got candidates at the other, right? Everybody's wanting something. Like I said, the traditional process leads to all the stakeholders being cranky, and the opportunity to really kind of turn that around. And you know, anyway, that you asked me what got me excited. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the opportunity to kind of really kind of bring forward a platform that enables that kind of um, shift, right? Because recruiting is critical, right? Companies today only really differentiate themselves by talent. I know we all know this. Lots of lip service gets given to it, but at the end of the day, recruiters and right are the ones that are tasked with bringing in the talent into the business. So if they don't get that right,
Right.
because hiring managers don't know who they don't see, they only know who's presented to them, right? So
Yeah. And that's it's a hard job just when you have a qualified candidate, and you go, okay, I've got 5 good ones for you, hiring manager. I need you to take a look at them and then interview them. It's really hard for a lot of recruiters to get that little bit done. And for that, it's just amazing. It's amazing to me to see
right.
so many great people out there working so hard, and
And still
like I
feeling
said
like it's,
before.
yeah, and right, having a hard time, still feeling like they're underappreciated, and the profession gets a black eye, right? You go into Google and type recruiting, and the type ahead is recruiting sucks, or some of these other kinds of right trending kind of items. It's not. It's right. This is the dichotomy here. Is how do we flip this around? Uh, Again, it's a real.
Well, I've got a few ideas about how we can
Tell
flip
me,
that
tell me.
around. but
What do you think? Yeah.
but yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yes.
But the you go look at what's really going on out there. I think where it all starts is for a lot of the recruiters, there's just not enough hours in the day to talk to the candidates. And nobody has ever been hired that I know of that got a job without talking to the
At
employer.
least once, right?
There's got to be a conversation that
Right.
happens, has to.
I mean, you can automate
And
parts of it, right? But
one of the most,
there's conversation in the loop somewhere with a human, right? Hmm.
it has to happen. It may not be at the beginning, and there may be a lot of efficiency we can drive by automating that, and that's fine. That's part of what we do. But the other part is when it does come
Hmm.
time to talk to people, the thing we're seeing, and this is the thing that to this day, a lot of our customers don't believe until they experience it, and that's that. We've got a room full of people that are chatting with candidates all day long. They talk to an average of 250
Wow.
candidates a day.
Hmm.
Most recruiters, when you're using phone and email and doing it the way that most companies do, you're lucky as a recruiter to dial the phone 30, 40 times and talk to 10 or 15
Sure.
candidates and have a meaningful conversation with maybe 3 or 4 of them. Most people that you reach, if you're a recruiter, are going to just tell you to go
Yeah.
away
I mean, and
because
that's not the speed of business today, right? I mean,
no,
I,
it's
I
not. And so,
started with my example of hey, it took a week to just say
right.
thank you to people. I mean, and you were mentioning, 2 weeks or more before in today's world. So,
Yeah. So best of the best, candidate experience, 30 years ago was a week for getting a response. And now you go best of the best. What is that? Well, for a lot of our customers, every candidate that applies gets a high within seconds. And depending on what kind of job that is, they could be talking with a live person within a couple of minutes every time. And we're enabling recruiting teams to do that. We're also doing that in a way that, maybe you don't have the staff for that, but you want to have that experience. We have a solution for that. We have a contact center solution for that. So there's, I think where we're at now, this is why I was so excited to have you join the team, David, is you understand what recruiting needs to be. And we want to help transform companies to be that. We want to make it so your recruiting team can actually respond quickly every time, and your recruiters can talk to hundreds of people in a day. And more importantly, your hiring managers are talking to engaged, qualified people all the time, so you're able to make the best choice every time. And I think the thing that's been constant in what has been changing over the years has just been the speed that we have to go. And sometime in the last 2 years, we went from, oh, you got a week to now you got 30
right.
minutes.
I mean, I think what the latest stats are, there's still, even though there's rumor of slowdowns and recessions, there's still an average of two openings per every person unemployed, right? There's more open,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so you move slow. I mean, people have choices, right? And if you mistreat them, right, the disrespect, people, the
Oh,
patience for being, in a queue and not hearing back, folks, right, the tolerance for that goes, right, is gone pretty quick. So again, the more than ever,
well, what
right?
people do about it now is they just go take a job
Right.
somewhere else, and because they can. And that just kind of ties into really, why do you need to go fast? Well, it's if you want to hire the best people that are responding to your job ads, or the best people that you're sourcing, you've got to keep up with those candidates and engage them on their terms, or you're going to miss.
Right. And oftentimes teams would say, well, to move fast, I have to really scope it and kind of only deal. And this is where we get back to, the go forward candidates, but the bulk of the people who, right, the crankiest ones, right, and maybe they're your future next candidate for some other job. Maybe they're your customers. Maybe there's, right, the talent board talks about this, right, a great phrase called candidate resentment, right? And
Yes.
how that is not just a thing, but a rising thing, right? The scores on candidate resentment are going up. That's the wrong direction, right? We have all these tools out there.
Yeah, I think the last time I read an article from the talent board about candidate resentment, I think the words all time
Right?
high
And
were
yet it's
were in the article.
2022,
So
right? Yeah,
candidate resentment,
yeah,
yeah, all time high. And a lot of it just comes down to the candidates are moving very quickly. I hire software developers for my team, and when I do, I'm usually able to hire them before other companies even get around to calling the candidates that have applied for the job. But the reason I'm able to find great talent in that market is we're able to go from job ad up to candidates talking to people same day. Um, and that means we're interviewing people the next day and we're making offers the third day.
Nearly everybody carries a cell phone these days, right? And we've integrated text into our lives, not just from a recruiting perspective. It is a way of communicating universally, right? With our kids, with our families, with right. It's just a tool that we have with us all the time. So for recruiting teams to not be leveraging that as an opportunity is just a miss, right? But
Well, it's remarkable to me how many recruiting teams don't have anything that does texting yet. There's a lot of productivity you pick up just from text messages, but when you really get into it and you've integrated it into the workflow, integrated it into I source them, then we engage them, or I integrated into you apply on Indeed, and that apply triggers a conversation. When we get to that level, it really changes the game for the recruiters and the hiring managers, because what's going on is you're going faster than everybody that you're competing with, and as a result you're going to get the first pick on candidates every time.
yeah,
So
you beat them everybody else to the punch, right? And this is the thing, But
yeah,
and to give recruiters the ability to not have to use their personal phone, but still be able to give them texting capability, and give the employers the confidence that there's compliance in the mix here, and that all of this data stays resident. And I mean, there's just so many positives, right? I mean, sure, could a recruiter start texting somebody on their personal phone, but
sure,
right? Think of all
they
the
can
yeah,
do that, and,
yeah.
and it will get the message there, but it becomes a problem, when you start looking at compliance and you start looking at, okay, now we got a complaint and somebody sent on their personal phone. You get into some areas you might not want to get into.
Yeah, and recruiters come and go, and that way also the right conversations stay. They're the property of the company, and the employers and the candidates get to right. It's an employer-candidate relationship,
Well,
and the recruiter is really just the ambassador, having that conversation at that particular moment. Right?
absolutely. So you and I met, actually, I think when you and I met, you were working with a chatbot company. And this is at the very beginning of the AI revolution when, almost
I
every
remember.
startup that year was some kind of AI machine learning
Sure.
chatbot or whatever. And you've seen the best of chatbot, you've seen the worst of it, you've seen good and bad. Um, where do you think bots really fit into the recruiting workflow? Where do they do their best work? Where do they deliver 90% of the value?
Yeah, there's some defined use cases, especially I'll say the things that lump into high volume. That the areas where recruiters would love to give a white glove concierge service level of
Mm-hmm.
service, but can't because of all their other responsibilities. Right, these are good places you can plug in. Right, in general, I think it probably goes without saying, but just again, the value of automation, the ROI, the payback on that comes when there's something of volume. And the interesting thing about the chatbots, obviously, is that you can be conversational, so you can mimic some of the human experience. But at the end of the day, you can't replicate the whole thing, right? I mean, there were some gee whiz AI things. I remember there was this one of those companies, right? It was a head, right? There was a desk, right? Do you remember this one? I think it was out
Oh
of
yeah,
Sweden, where you could actually talk to it. It had a face, right? And it was kind of AI, NLP, conversational, algorithms and talking behind the scenes, because people, right? A chatbot is only a piece of it. They want to have, we're social creatures, and
right.
recruiting is a relationship business. It's real hard to build a relationship with a machine, right? And there is a place in the mix where you need to ask questions that are unique to you. There's not going to be a standard set of answers for everybody. Comes down to even for high volume jobs, people want to ask something and talk to somebody, right? You can't run the
So
whole process through a machine.
I don't know if you know this or not, but before we met you, we were looking at building our own chatbot. Before we were PivotCX, we were a different company, and
Mhm.
we spent about $500,000 building a chatbot. And you're going to love this. One day we had a team of interns versus the chatbot who could turn more job applies into interviews.
Mm.
And the interns beat the chatbot by a factor of 10.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And a lot of it was because there were just so many places where the candidates were going off the happy path for the bot.
Right.
The bot, if you did what most people do, the bot would work for you.
Hmm.
But kind of by definition, most of your interactions aren't going to be what most people do.
Right. So even if you're using a bot and some employers have gone down that route, you still need to be able to have the human in the loop, right? And how do you continue that same conversation and do the warm handoff? But then now it's person to person communications, right? There's
Yeah,
still a place, right?
absolutely.
Right.
They work so well. Back to that high volume use case you talked about. Yeah, if you've got 2,000 applicants a day coming in, no way you're going to talk to all of them, nor should you. But having the bot do that initial screening can absolutely help a lot, because it gives that candidate an immediate experience. It gives them immediate feedback. And more importantly, it helps keep your recruiting team focused on qualified and engaged candidates. And I think that's a big problem out there. David, we didn't talk about it much, but it's real. There's a lot of recruiting teams that spend an awful lot of time with candidates that are never going to talk to them. They're just not engaged.
Right. And yet, right, recruiters are responsible for bringing in the right talent, but they have to sift through. And this is, again, these are not new concepts, right? And
No,
recruiting
they're not.
itself, yeah,
It just blows my mind when you look at like a recruiter that's like screening resumes, and the problem with resumes is that you don't know whether the candidate behind that resume is going to engage or not. You don't know if you can actually reach them when you're looking at their resume, and so you're making the decision: am I going to reach out to them or not? And well, okay, great. Part of the problem is a third of your resumes, half of your resumes aren't ever going to even talk to you. They're not even going to engage.
right. And yeah, so being able to have an asynchronous way, again, with a device that's integrated into our life. We're not trying to create new habits.
Right.
This is done, right? The world has decided texting is a thing, right? So again, and we have this regularly with us, right? I don't know if you know the stats, Mike. You probably know better than me, but the latency, the response time, right, on between
Oh,
getting a text and and responding to it, right? But I mean, versus send them an email and maybe never, right? It's
so
mhm.
the big number, if I send a text message to somebody, what's the average amount of time between when I send it and when they read it? Is it less than 3 minutes? Response is about 3 minutes and 40 seconds on
Yeah,
average.
say
So I send you, if I could do this with email, it would be amazing. I send an email and it gets read within 3 minutes, and then somebody actually replies inside of 4 minutes. That would be amazing. But that's what's going on with texting right now. It works that well. So back to what you said, it is amazing that a lot of recruiters don't have a tool for
and
doing this.
right, the tools are here, and we just so now putting them together in a way that in a solutions kind of way, right? There, so many of the companies I also see have a lot of features, but they don't really understand really what they're solving for, and giving customers the ability to identifying with their pain points, and then right, there's a solution here, that there is a better way, right? This is that age old, what if there were a better way? Well, there is, and maybe you just didn't know about it, but so. Um,
When I think you're really honing in on the most important part of it, which is that every company recruits a little differently, and these, just because I have a solution that checks a bunch of boxes, it doesn't mean that my software is going to be the right thing. There's a lot more to it, and I don't know. That's why I'm really excited about this, and I'm hoping, as we go out and start working with the market, I think you're going to be a really valuable resource for a lot of talent acquisition leaders out there that are looking at this going, how do we speed up? How do we make it? I'm down 300 recs. We've got 300 jobs to fill. How can we get over that hump? And I think a conversation with David's going to go a long way to helping
I
you get
appreciate
there.
that, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I've been on both sides of the desk. I've been the buyer of solutions. I've led recruiting teams. Yeah, and again, what makes, well, we said this several times, right? The candidate, what makes a great candidate experience hasn't really changed over the years. How we do, what we need to do, the core components of recruiting are also essentially the same, right? Um, how do you get the word out? How do you find interesting and interested, affordable, available people to get them into the hopper and move them through a process in a very respectful way that gives people, the frequent feedback that they need, but also supports the recruiter and helps them kind of run all the activity they need to do, but keeps the hiring managers in the loop, right? It's an end to end activity, right? But
Right.
I think the thing that when you think about the candidate experience, it's this broad phrase. Um, for me, that phrase is really the sum total of, I don't know the exact number, but let's say it's 20 plus micro experiences that are little steps along the way, every one of which is a point of possible success or failure. And every one of those is about a feedback or a taking care of something, doing right. And if the vast majority, if are not positive experiences, that's when I might say my whole candidate experience was cruddy, right? But it's the sum total. Thinking about candidate experience is really thinking about a holistic, from discovery to hire, and every kind of step along the way. Anyway, our ability here at PivotCX to kind of create bespoke kind of solutions that in creating the kind of engagement and workflow for customers that drive their business outcomes. Yeah, anyway, now you've got me. I'm super excited, right? Because
Well,
that's what we can do here, right? Transform recruiting into a business
well,
asset.
absolutely. That's what gets me excited about coming to work in the morning. So change pace a little bit here. Just a couple personal
Sure.
questions. Favorite business book. What book have you read that really changed the way you look at the business world?
Wow. Um, well, there's two. I'll say if you say favorite one, but I'll say two. Both of them are actually very short reads, so I'll put a plug in for both of them. One is the classic "Who Moved My Cheese," right? Right, but simple, right?
Okay.
Simple ideas that are, but I think are critical, right? Getting stuck in one way of doing things, and versus kind of being flexible, adaptable. I mean, resilient. This idea about business operates and things change, and that's, as we all know, is the only
Hmm.
constant, is that things will change. And the other one is Lencioni's book about the five dysfunctions of a team. Because I really find that, again, it's about relationships, and teams work when there's high trust, and then that's clearly the number one dysfunction within a team is when there's lack of trust. And so when you can build that kind of high reliability and trust between teams, you can get great innovation. All right, it's a killer if you don't have trust within the team. So anyway, my two favorite business books.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Okay. This one's a little easier. Favorite movie.
favorite movie. Wow.
Well, maybe not easier.
Well, for those that are old enough to remember, but Harold and Maude is one of my favorites of all time. That and well, anyway, I'll keep it to that one. But yeah, it's a story about life, right? It told through a looking back, and somebody who's near the end of her life, but and someone who doesn't see the value in his own life until her life ends. And anyway, it's kind of an interesting way of telling a story about cherishing what you have every day in your life. So anyway, great movie. If I'd encourage everybody to go find a copy or look it up on Netflix if you can. Thanks, Mike. I'm glad to be here as well. Thank you for everything.